What's up, people? It's Joshua, and you are here with New Dimension Family Worship. Here at our ministry, we have a threefold purpose. Number one, restore people to God. This means we want to help every individual come into relationship with God the way that He intended for us. Number two, restore people to each other. From the garden until now, we've expanded tremendously as a people. But in all that time, the vision and purpose that God has for the way that we interact with each other has never changed. He wants us to move in love, kindness, joy, peace, and so many other things. We believe through this purpose, we can get back to the vision that God has for our relationship with each other as people. Number three, rebuilding the desolate cities. There are many cities that are fallen and in a bad way right now. And while Jesus was here on earth, He served the poor, the broken, not only in the material wealth, but also in the mind, heart, and spirit. So we take that mission seriously, and we seek to develop and build programs that will support and rebuild our cities, not just as a people, not just in material, but in the mind first. I know I'm not the face you're used to seeing. Normally it's Pastor Hall up here, but for the next couple of weeks, I'll be taking over with a short series that is specifically tailored to talk about how we steward our freedom. What is our freedom? And what are the things in the way of our freedom? Tonight, we're going to have our first conversation about that topic. Together, let's find out what it all means. Now today, we are going to be talking about our freedom. We're going to continue on in the book of Exodus, but we're going to get a little bit of a sneak peek of what is coming in the future. So the goal for today is to learn more about our freedom. Our topic is freedom stewards. Let me hear it. Okay, freedom stewards. By the end of our time here today, we will have a better understanding of what freedom is and how to steward our freedom to enjoy the sweet promised land that God has purposed for you, for me, and for everyone He created here on earth. So that's our goal today. I'm going to say it one more time. By the end of our time today, we will have a better understanding of what our freedom is and how to steward that freedom so that we can continue to walk in that freedom and enjoy the sweet promised land that God has promised to us, right? So the year of this is staying right in that same vein of coming out to enter in. So right to go along with that, in our stages before we reach freedom, there are some things that happen before we become free. The first thing that happens is you're in bondage. We know that the children of Israel, they've been in Egypt. They've been in bondage after what? After there came a king who did not know Joseph. All right? So they were in bondage for a long time, and the prophesied time was 430 years. Then they go through deliverance. Now notice we're at another phase, but how many of us know bondage is not something that is just one season? Bondage can be many seasons. Deliverance can be many seasons. If they were in bondage for 430 years, best believe they went through many seasons. Now watch this. When they were free, freedom came at once. Bondage, 430 years. Deliverance, 430 years. Freedom came at once. So let's look at the moment they became free. Like I said, they were in bondage for over 430 years. Now I want you to get a timer out. Well, no, that's all. You don't got to do that. I'll get my timer out. And I'm going to read you exactly what happened when they became free. When Pharaoh declared that he was going to let the people go. And we're going to see how long it actually took for their freedom to be had. Because as soon as he decreed it, freedom was there. So if you want to read with me, I'm in Exodus 12:31. All right. Now I'm going to start my timer as soon as I start to read. And let's see how long it took for them to get free. And he called Moses and Aaron by night and said, "Rise up and get you forth from among my people. Both you and the children of Israel, go and serve the Lord as you said you want to. Also take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone, and bless me also." 20 seconds. 20 seconds. All he had to do was say the word, and they were free in 20 seconds. Now, he goes on to say a few more things, because as you can tell, this is after the plagues. He's like, y'all got to go. And so when he sends them out, he doesn't just give them their freedom. The later verses show us that they gave them gold, gave them things of treasure, high value. And then they said, now y'all can go. They gave them bread. They gave them all these resources for their journey. They're like, get out, take whatever you want, and go. This next passage I'm going to read you is some of their first moments of freedom. And this is coming out of Exodus 15. Verse 19 is where we're going to start. And here in this section, this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time with this particular set of scriptures. Exodus 15, starting in verse 19. It says, "For the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea. And the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them, but the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea." As you can tell, they've dropped us off in the part of the story where Moses has parted the Red Sea. And they're now walking through the Red Sea as the Egyptians are coming behind them and the waters are closing in. He's talking about their deliverance. This, how many know this is a part of their freedom too? They've already been declared free, and now already within a short time frame, something is trying to bring them back into bondage. Now, wait a minute. This doesn't feel right. So the first thing we're talking about, remember our goal, better understand what comes with freedom. I think a lot of times we associate, when we think about the word freedom, we are actually associating it with thoughts of the promised land. That's later. That is after you have experienced freedom and stewarded it well enough, then you can see the promised land. It's like last week, we know our word for this year is coming out to enter in, and we talked about our preview for next year, having dominion over what you have. I think when we think about freedom, our minds automatically go to dominion over our freedom. But we got to learn how to steward that freedom first. And so what we're seeing right now is one of the first times the Israelites have the opportunity to steward their freedom. Now, in all honesty, they don't have to do too much because God is, he's quite literally making a way. Now, what is their part is walking through. And I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself. Let's get back into it. It says, so the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea. And the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with their timbrels and with dances. I like this part. And Miriam answered them, "Sing ye to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider he hath thrown into the sea." So Moses brought forth Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. Okay. 430 years in bondage. 430 years worth of deliverance. 20 seconds to declare their freedom. And already, something has tried to pull them back. They escaped the threat trying to pull them back into bondage. They're happy, they sing and they dance. They look around and there's nothing to drink. This doesn't feel like freedom. It is showing us that our freedom might not be what we expected it to be. And it doesn't make our freedom any less free. It just means that our expectation was not fairly set. And the reason that our expectation was not fairly set wasn't because God isn't good. It wasn't because God fell short on his promise. It wasn't that he forgot to mention something. It was rather our lack of attention. All right? And assumption, quite honestly. We assume that the promised land begins right after the bondage. It doesn't. And that's what this is teaching us, because we didn't have to live this. So if you didn't live it, learn from it. I don't know what they had to learn from. I don't know I don't know what book they could have read to learn how to do this better, how to not experience this kind of disappointment. But I know that we can learn from their lives in the things that they learn so that we don't have to learn it by firsthand experience. Because this freedom does not feel free. They've been chased. This freedom feels fearful. Fearful that the water might cave in at any moment. Fearful that even if the water doesn't close, they'll catch us. Fearful of what they might do when we get back over there. Fearful that my family might be separated in an attempt to get my freedom, and maybe I would have been better off if I would have just stayed back there in bondage. Fear now, I didn't follow this guy Moses out here. Moses is a murderer. Why I follow a murderer out here? He lived in the palace. What does he know about us? All these questions now floating that they didn't have to worry about. All this concern, this worry, this doubt, all of these new emotions that come with freedom. Didn't have to worry about this in bondage. But we want freedom though, right? Right now it's not looking too good. And so I come to tell you today that freedom at first can feel overwhelming. There's a lot going on. And and this is something, belief in God is not to ignore the reality of your trauma, not to ignore the reality of your circumstances. Faith in God doesn't say that didn't happen. Faith in God says that happened and I am still here. And if I am still here, I'm not done. So that's what we say. We say, let him cook. Let him cook. Because you can't be walking up in the chef's kitchen talking about, is it done? What if you walked in the chef's kitchen with a fish on the stove before it was done? And he said, I want it now. And he gives it to you and you get sick. Who's at fault? Who can you be angry with? Because we want a chef that will cater to our whims. But we don't respect all of the knowledge and the wisdom that goes into his decision making. And we don't know all the knowledge. Even if he told us, we won't understand it. Because that chef has gone through a lot of training. And he has a lot of experience that we simply don't have. And even if he explains it to us, it won't make sense. Do you trust the chef in your kitchen or not? If you don't trust the chef, get a new one. It's that simple. But if you want that chef in your kitchen, let him be the chef. That's what faith is. Faith is, I don't understand, don't make sense to me, but you got it. And that's difficult to do. And the Israelites at this point, they have gone through a lot of putting faith in the chef, and particularly the sous chef, being Moses. I'd probably looking around like, man, you ain't even God. I don't know why I didn't follow. I should have listened to get my own word from God. Maybe he would have told me something different. All these questions. And so we know, and I'm kind of going off right here, but I'll bring us back in a second. We know in Philippians 4 through 8, it talks about the importance of where we place our focus. Like we said, faith in God does not deny the reality of what else is going around you. It just means that in all of that, I still am. So when we feel these questions, when we feel how freedom can feel overwhelming, when we feel like freedom is fear, when this gold that was a blessing, just that we got, they just blessed us with this gold, when it's, man, this gold was so great, and now we walking out here with no water, and it becomes, now this gold is heavy. When that comes, the perspective needs to be, we need to remember, this gold is heavy, and this is gold I didn't have. Man, we've been walking a long time. I used to not be able to walk this far. Like, we got to shift our perspective. Focus on whatever is good, whatever is pure, whatever is of God. Focus on these things. Don't focus on the other stuff. I talked to a man in my Bible study the other day, and we were talking about this idea of where we place our focus. And let's talk about, and this is not his particular story. This is purely just any given circumstance. It could fit anybody's foot. If the shoe fits, you wear it. And if not, you know which shoe does fit. Let's say me. Say I'm a man. I might be dealing with alcohol, and that might have a strong hold on me. And I've broken that. I don't want it anymore. I can't spend time at the bar. I know I can't spend time there, but I might still have a desire to go there. Every now and then my flesh might want to pull me that way. I also have a desire to be with my family, spend time with my family. What I really should do is I shouldn't focus as much on not going to the bar. I can focus on where I want to be, which is with my family. If I focus on being with my family, if I focus on the good times that we have together as a family, I'm not concerning myself with fighting to not be at the bar. I am focusing on enjoying my time with family. You can't be in two places at once. So if you're thinking about this, you can't be thinking about that. And that's not to say you won't have many thoughts in a day, because you will. But whenever you feel yourself start to drift towards the things that will not yield good fruit if you give it your focus, pick God to focus on. Pick the good things in your life to focus on. Pick the things that bring you joy. Pick the things that make you smile and focus on those things. And the reason they're telling us to focus is because God knows it is not something that is one and done. It's not easy. That's why he's telling us to do it. Focusing is not a one and done thing. It is something that you continue to do. In the same way how they were going to continue to be in bondage, now we have to learn out how to continue to be free. All right? So we're looking at this passage, and these free people, they don't look too free. It doesn't feel too free. They're overwhelmed. They feel weak. They're thirsty. There's no water. What's going on? You can't stay out. When you're moving in freedom, moving towards freedom, especially a freedom like this, one that you pray for and you believe God is answering, you can't start doing things on your own. If God is delivering you freedom, you need God. And the good thing is, he will never leave you alone. He's always going to have your back. But God-given freedom is a God plan. It's not a man's plan. All right? So they followed God out here. Nothing anybody did got them here. No man got them here. Moses did not get them there. In Moses' hand, the staff is nothing but that. The staff only has power when God speaks the power first. If God doesn't tell Moses to part the sea with his staff, Moses might not even think to do that. Moses might say, let's swim. Moses might say, man, maybe God has something else in store. And let's just turn back and go with them and go back and maybe we'll find something else out. No. You got to keep going. When you go on God's plan, you can't say, I got this now. When you say, I got this now, you think you have the will, you've actually jumped out the car. You've jumped out. And you jumped out and you think you're still in there. And what does it look like if we think we're still in the car, but we are barreling down the highway, accruing scrapes, cuts, damage, because we jumped out the car? There's a scripture in the New Testament, I believe it's in Luke. It says, what does it mean to have light and think that it's darkness? How deep is that darkness that you think your light is dark? How deep is our darkness if we think that to be in the car, to be rolling down, we could be rolling down, have a life experience where we're rolling down the sidewalk, and to fully believe we are in the car in agreement with God. It's possible. And it's amazing that that's possible, but that's why you need community. You need people around you that can help you when you start to look like you're about to get out the car. Whoa, hold on now. Don't do that. This is God's plan. We got to go God's way. So now let me give you the difference between a God plan and a man plan. A God plan gets you to a destination that God designs and God picks. All right? But the Egyptians, not the Egyptians, while in Egypt, the Israelites, they might have wanted to be free, but where are they going to go to be free? God gave them a and we know he set that destination of the promise before they were born. Gave it to Abraham. Gave that to Abraham. The God destination was the promised land. All right? So, but with God's plan, it's not just God's destination, it's God's path. All right? And so when you are on a God plan, it has a God-chosen destination with a pathway chosen by God, directed by God. You cannot go through a God planned path without God. You can't. I'm not even going to explain to you why you can't. You don't know what you're doing. You've never been here before. You didn't orchestrate it. You don't know how it's supposed to run. The first time I talked to y'all, we talked about that. As you do not know the ways of the wind or the way a baby is formed in a mother's womb, so you do not know the plans of God. And even though he shares the plan with you, it doesn't mean that you know where it's going. He told you everything you know, not everything he knows. All right? The stuff our parents tell us, it got a lot of truth to it. And he's the Heavenly Father, so it applies to him as well. Again, God's plan, God's destination, God's route. You can't do it without God. If you can do it without God, you're not on God's path. I don't care but nope. You can still have a relationship with God, but that doesn't mean that you're doing your plan his way. You can't do a man plan. A man plan chooses its own destination, and it gets you there on a path that can be completed without God. And like I said, you can be operating in a man plan and still have a relationship with God. It doesn't mean that you don't love God. Doesn't mean that you don't care about keeping the principles. But what it does mean is you are a little bit shaky when it comes to giving up full control. And that's not something that you should feel shame for. It's not something that you should feel condemned for. You shouldn't feel guilty about that. The whole point about having faith acknowledges that I'm about to say something crazy. Faith acknowledges, I know what it looks like, but go this way. Faith acknowledges faith acknowledges all the reasons that you, quote unquote, should not believe. Faith acknowledges all the reasons that it is logical to not follow the path of God. That's why faith accounts for righteousness in God's eyes. Because he knows how hard it is for you to choose his path. So when you do it, he wants to reward you greatly for saying that you believe in him. Faith that you believe when he said he loves you, that he wasn't lying. Faith when he says he's there and has not forsaken you, that even when you can't feel him, you know he's still there because he said it. All right? So faith acknowledges the reasons that we'd understand why you don't want to believe. Faith acknowledges all of those things. But you can't go with a man plan. A man plan will not get you to a God destination. And a lot of times that's where we find dissonance. God gives us a destination. We agree with the destination. And then we think we can collaborate with God on the path. No, this is not a collaboration. This is follow the leader. This is not a collab. Follow the leader. And so this is a tricky thing too. One distinction I want to make is when you are walking with God, you can, like I said, you can have a relationship with God, but when you're going on God's path, you are in complete submission to the way he wants to go and how he wants to get there. If you are creating your own plan and saying, oh, I'm open to God's input, I don't know. Because sometimes we can say we're open to God's input, but you can be open to his input and still respectfully decline his input. You're like, no, God, I'd prefer to do it like this. And you have the choice to do that. But if you keep compounding those decisions and it gets to the point where the walk of your life is more decisions where you are agreeing with you rather than agreeing with God, you will not get to that God destination. You might see fragments of it. You're going to get different kinds of blessings. Like here, they left Egypt with gold, but that's not the promised land. Holding gold ain't the promised land. Having food to eat tomorrow, that's not the promised land. Crossing the Red Sea wasn't the promised land. None of this was the promised land. We're still trying to get there. You got to keep saying yes. How the same way how it says, yesterday's enemies are yesterday's enemies. Yesterday's obedience is yesterday's obedience. We always say something popular, God didn't bring me this far just to get this far. Okay, so on the flip, did you obey this far just to be this far? So, God will go as far as you want to go with him. Wherever you want to go on your own, that's between you and you. But let's keep moving. Like I said, and I'm not saying this to bog you down, but it's, again, our goal is to have a better understanding of what freedom is so that we can steward it. How can you steward something you don't understand? You can't. You can't hope to do it right. And I talked to a friend of mine. I said, any good message that we share about the gospel at any point in time, when the message is over, you should have conviction and hope. You can't give conviction without, well, you can, but I personally believe it's best if you want people to hear what you have to say and mobilize it in their life, give them conviction and then give them hope. Show them that they can do it. Help them believe that. That's what we're going to spend the last part of today doing. I want to lend you some hope. No, you can keep it. I don't want to lend it to you. Don't give it back. I want you to keep the hope. All right? So let's read the next part of what they're going through. This is still in Exodus 15. We stopped at 22. We're going to continue at 23. It says, and they came to Marah. They could not drink the waters there because they were bitter. Therefore, the name of it was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses. Be careful how you murmur at your leaders when they've brought you far, because they're dependent on God too. All right, don't forget that. They're dependent on God as well. So they murmured against Moses and said, what shall we drink? And Moses cried unto the Lord and said, the Lord showed him a tree, which he had cast into the waters. And when let me slow down. And he cried unto the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he cast into the waters were made sweet. There he made them a statute and an ordinance, and he proved them and said, if thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon thee, which I have brought upon the Egyptians. For I am the Lord that healeth thee. And when they came to Elim, there were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees. A score is 20. 70. 60 and 10 is 70. 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Now they just had no water to drink. Now they have palm trees and water, 12 wells of water. God provided. He made a way. They went with God's plan. God's plan has provision. Man's plan has questions that you have to answer. God's plans have questions he has to answer. Don't try to answer God's questions. Not only are they not for you to do, he wants to answer them. I was talking about some people with how school works, and I always say, well, if you're sometimes if you're on the fence about a degree, see if you can get a job without the degree first, and then see if your job will pay for the degree. Because if you haven't gotten it yet and they want you to get it, they'll pay for you to get it. But if you've already gotten it, they can't pay for you to get it. And they're not going to, oh, well, it's great that you did this to prepare for our role. Here's the money that you paid for. They're not doing that. They're not doing that. And you wouldn't expect them to. All right? So let God answer the questions that he presents in your life. He's got the answer key. And so let's wrap up. How can I combat feeling overwhelmed? How can I combat feeling weak in order to continue walking in my freedom? Number one, slow down to recognize God's motion in your life. Slow down to recognize God's motion in your life. Now we're going to backtrack because we're doing a complete thing here. Let's go to Exodus 11, verse number 4. Slow down to recognize the motion of God in your life. Like they've been through a lot. They've been through the plagues. They've been through the Red Sea. They've been through 430 years. They didn't been through so much. They didn't been through Mara. They ain't had no water. Now they got water now. All this stuff they went through, and at every step of the way, they had to think, man, I hope that plague don't get us too. I'm believing God. And that, let me tell you, that doesn't mean you don't believe in God. It doesn't mean that you don't believe in God to still, well, I'm believing. I know what God said, and I'm going to believe it. Belief in God does not negate feelings arising. Belief in God says, man, this Passover is here. I didn't put the blood of the lamb over the doorpost. Now all I can do is wait. Your belief in God put the blood on the doorpost. So you believe, at least on a chance, that he'll keep his word and that he'll do what he said he'll do. Now, after you put that, oh man, listen to this. Now, when you put that blood on the doorpost and everyone else on your road did not, and you hear the angel of death and the sound, the wailing of Egypt, it is okay to feel, ooh, Lord. Please, I hope you don't take mine too. That's natural to feel that way. But like we said, all this stuff that happens every step of the way to maintain your freedom, you have to steward your feelings. And here is where we talk about freedom stewards. Freedom stewards your feelings. But here's the other part. Freedom stewards. Now, at first, I'm saying freedom is the object of the sentence, and freedom is doing something. When you have freedom, the freedom will steward. Now I'm saying freedom stewards. Practice players. Get it? Freedom stewards. There's two of you. It's you and God. You never have to steward your freedom alone. So freedom stewards. So freedom stewards over my feelings. But we're freedom stewards. I don't got to do this alone. In 1 Thessalonians 4, it talks about the importance of leaning on your fellow body members in Christ. Because he knows you're going to go through some stuff that challenges your feelings. And when your feelings are challenged, you have to hold up a mirror to your feelings of faith. When I feel fear, oh, wait, but here's the other side of that. Why I don't have to be afraid. And it doesn't mean that it's going to eradicate your feelings. Your feelings will never be eradicated. But every time you have a feeling, you have an opportunity to reflect it with faith. So when that fear arises, just make sure you bring something else with it. Don't let that fear stand alone. So in the freedom stewards, you don't do it. You don't got to do it on your own. But like I said, we're in Exodus 11:4. Listen to this here. And Moses said, "Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sit upon the throne, even the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and the firstborn of beasts. And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it anymore." It's never been like this ever, and it's never going to happen again. The sound of trauma will never reign through the air like it is about to tonight. He's telling you it's about to get dark, but you have light. It's about to get messy. You'll stay clean. Because what? You already shed your blood. Well, not yours. You already shed blood. Everybody gave blood on the night of Passover. Everybody gave up some blood. Which blood? But it's about the blood you chose. Everybody bled. And so that sometimes the enemy gets you to think if you go his way, if you go your way, you won't have to give something up. You will. But the thing with how the enemy perverts everything, he tries to steal everything God does. When God asks you for something, first of all, he asks, he don't demand. And when he asks, he tells you exactly what he wants you to give. The enemy gets you to think, deceives you into thinking you don't got to give nothing, and then he just comes to collect. And he don't collect nothing that's not precious. That's deceit. He's good at what he does. He's very good at it. Don't forget where he used to live. Don't forget his last address. And don't forget that we are here to show, we are literally here as people as beings not as powerful as the angels. And like how last week, my father talked about how every time the enemy sees you, he's reminded of how he's not nothing to God. Can't stand next to God. Because if God could create man and man is weaker than angels, and with God, we still stand above, it's not how great you are. It's showing the enemy how great God still is and always will be. That God, it's basically him saying, hey, look, dude, let's play a game of basketball. You can play with both hands. I'm going to take this baby. right? And this baby can't touch the ball and will still beat you. What? You gonna beat me with a baby and the baby can't touch the ball? Bet. The enemy, even after spending so much time with God, because of his lens of pride, still can't see God for all he is. He knows, but it's the lens he's wearing that's making him see God different from who he truly is. All right? So it's freedom stewards. You don't got to do it alone. Recognize the motion of God in your life. When you slow down and recognize the motion, you can say, he didn't brought us, we didn't, 10 plagues. We didn't get touched by none of the plagues. 10 times it's not our freedom. We still got free. Red Sea didn't get, everybody here. Everybody's still here. Yeah, we got that water. Man and the quail. Yeah, we did. Yeah. Every time there was a question, God provided an answer. And so when we talk about that, if you don't slow down and remember that, commemorate that, take that into memory and rehearse that, you will forget, because that was a lot happening. When there's so much happening, you have to slow down and remember and process it. There's another thing the enemy wants to do. He wants you to speed past that. Speed past your deliverance so you don't even know. Like, I'm going to cut these chains off you so fast before you can even move your hands. And you'll still stand there like this. walking down the Red Sea like this. Walking through the Red Sea like this because you never realized that you never looked down. Oh, the chains are gone. What is it? What does it mean to have chains? They're not there no more, and you still are confused about whether you got them or not. Because you on some level, you know you're free because you walked out of Egypt, but you're still holding your hands as if you have chains on. Focus. Where you put your focus. And when you're running through the Red Sea, you might not got time to focus. When the plagues are coming and the feelings is heavy, the anxiety is high, you might not got time to focus. That's why he's telling you to do it, because he knows it's not like our first reaction to think about, to do that. So realize that he's been there, took care of you the whole way. And number 2, taste and see what the Lord has done. Taste the water that wasn't in Mara. Taste it. Taste the freedom. Breathe the air that you couldn't breathe. Breathe the air that is not of Egypt. Do the dance you couldn't do in shackles. Wear the clothes that you couldn't wear when you were a slave. It said that they clothed them before they left. Eat the bread that's not stale. Taste and see what is here. If the bread tastes this good in the wilderness, well, doggone, it got to taste good in the promised land. It got to, and there's got to be stuff that I can't even imagine. All right? Now, we are out of time, not out of word. Next time when we get together, we're going to get a little bit more personal about our freedom. You can see we started talking about some shackles. Next time, we're not going to talk about, because all of us, now look, I ain't never been no slave. Most likely you have never been a slave. But that doesn't mean bondage has not existed in our lives. Bondage of the mind. What about the chains we can't see, the shackles that we can't see? The shackles I don't know are there, but I'm moving. My body obeys the existence of the shackles, but my mind doesn't. I'm not consciously recognizing they're there. Let's talk about those shackles. Those, if you want an example of what I'm talking about, just to make it more clear, fear. Bondage to fear. Bondage to poor health. A poverty mindset. Bondage to a lack of purity in your sexual life. Stuff that when you walk around, we can't see it unless you tell us. That's the kind of stuff we're going to be talking about next week. Getting free from those things. And understanding when God says you're free, you are free. So when those shackles come off, we're going to talk about how we can exercise the freedom that we have. When you get free, don't act like a slave. Next time, we'll talk to you. We're coming out. We're coming out. To enter in, we're going to come out. So we're going to keep on coming out. Keep on coming out. Come out of all that fear, all the way out of it. Don't just open the door, walk through that door, and don't look back at that house. What happened with Lot's wife? They were coming out. They were coming out of Sodom and Gomorrah. It ended when she looked back. And sometimes we look back because something's calling your name. And I love the way he used to call my name, but I'm coming out. I'm coming out. Yeah, we was homies for a long time, but I'm coming out, and you don't want to come with me. I'm coming out. I got somewhere to be. I have an answered prayer that I got to get to. I didn't ask God for this prayer. I asked him to fulfill this request. And the request is there. I got to come out to get to that answered prayer. Because if it ain't that God didn't do it, I just might not have gone to pick it up. I got to go get that for me. And I want you to get yours too. You got to come out to enter in. Next time, peace and love.